All right, class, we're going to go over chapter 44, which is a new chapter to your textbook. Up until last year, it was not a part of your textbook. So bear with me as we go through some of this. It has a long title. It is EMS Response to Terrorist Incidents and High Threat and Active Shooter Incidents. There you go, mouthful. You can follow along on page 1424. And also the handout, the little printout I gave you outline the chapter, kind of fill in as we go there. All right, so this is talking about, first we'll talk about weapons of mass destruction. What is weapons of mass destruction? Weapons of mass destruction is any type of weapon that someone's made to harm people, and it has to actually get to the people they want to harm, right? For it to actually be a weapon of mass destruction. They put a lot of emphasis on whether it be a chemical agent, nuclear agent, whatever it may be, it has to actually reach its people it's intended to cause harm to for it to be considered a weapon of mass destruction. Having said that, when we look at like weapons of mass destruction, something to think about is we are never going to be fully prepared for weapons of mass destruction. Like probably the biggest incident for those of y'all that were alive or remember it was probably 9/11 when the Twin Towers fell. Those airplanes were a weapon of mass destruction, and they did hit their target, and they did have a huge effect on the population, and it actually changed EMS and the way we respond to this stuff moving forward. Like Homeland Security was founded after that. One of the biggest things we found as a challenge is the way we communicated with other agencies, because a lot of different states, different agencies had different ways that they responded to big incidents like this. So after 9/11, Homeland Security, the government tried to develop like a universal kind of plan, which you all should go online and look up, like FEMA and ICS, Incident Command classes. There's a lot of them you can take there, and it kind of gives a universal structure. That way every EMS agency, every first responder in the entire country is going to respond to something in similar fashion because of this. So taking that in consideration here. So pre-hospital considerations when you're going to something like this is, are you prepared? Do you have the stuff you need? Do you have the personal protective equipment do you need? How much do you know about the area? Is there an active shooter? Is there still some kind of radiation? Is there still some kind of like biological chemical that's going to cause harm to you? Substance. So making sure that you're prepared when you go out, or trying to be prepared when you go out, I guess. Your book talks about different kinds of explosives. It talks about like your traditional explosives, and then like homemade explosives out of like normal chemicals that you find around the house, around farms and stuff like that. I don't know if we need to dive too much into this. We see a lot of ICDs that are over in Afghanistan and over in the Middle East, of people just modifying little bombs over whatever they can find that's explosive or flammable type of stuff, usually kind of a thermal burn. We haven't went over this yet. This is earlier on the burns chapter, I think, or in the trauma chapter. But blast injuries are broken into four different types of injuries. You have your primary, your secondary, your tertiary, and your quaternary injuries. Your primary blast injury is going to be that change in pressure from explosive going off. So these are usually, you won't see these, or sometimes you won't see them. It is just a quick movement of air and pressure, and our injuries are going to typically be like lungs, eardrums, stuff like that. Something that has like air pockets in it. The digestive system is usually not affected because it can expand and contract pretty easy. But that's our primary injury. Our secondary injury is going to be like shrapnel that's flown from the site. So, some explosive stuff kind of flies on one of the big glass or metal or any kind of debris, and that debris hits us. That's going to be our secondary injuries. Our tertiary injury is going to be us getting thrown. So if the pressure of that, the primary blast and that change in like air picks us up and throws us, and then we land wherever we land at. However we get injured from getting thrown from the blast, that's going to be these injuries, the tertiary injuries there. And they pronounce this different ways. They have it spelled different ways in different books, so I'm calling it tertiary. And then this one right here, the quaternary, if I'm saying that right, I may be mispronouncing that. That is every other injury that you might sustain from a blast injury that we haven't already talked about. So it's like a catch-all box, is what that is. You will go over this again when we get to trauma. Okay, up to different chemical agents. Some of these you do need to know. You will see these on National Registry or final exam or something. Nerve agents. When we talk about nerve agents, you're talking about VX gas, talking about sarin gas. These are used for weapons of mass destruction. They're used to cause a significant amount of harm. As what they do is they inhibit the enzyme that breaks down acetylcholine in your muscle synapses. You're like, okay, great, that sounds like a lot. I need to remember that. No, you don't need to remember that. Essentially, what nerve agents do is it causes you to start leaking out of every orifice. So you do need to know the acronym SLUDGEM. It is in your book: salivation, lacrimation, urination, defecation. I may be missing something in there. Meiosis is one of them. But be familiar with the acronym SLUDGEM. Essentially, everything's leaking out of your body throughout a bunch of different orifices. That's what nerve gases, nerve agents do. And something you do need to take note of for nerve agents is there is antidote for this. There's something called a Mark I kit. There's something called a duodope kit. Both of these have paroxamine and atropine in them, and they are used to treat the nerve agent. Okay, kind of what the atropine does, it treats your signs and symptoms that you're suffering from, and then the paroxamine actually binds to the nerve gas and carries it out of your system. Having said that, if you're exposed to something like VX or sarin gas, you have Mark I kits or a duodope kit. That's usually used for me and my partner instead of the patients. So it's kind of like you stab yourself, it's an IM injection, just like an EpiPen, and then you get the hell out of there until someone else shows up. We're trained to deal with this kind of stuff for you. We used to carry these on the ambulance in eastern Kentucky at EKU around Richmond because we had a huge stockpile of weapons of mass destruction for our government there in the area. So we used to carry these on the ambulance for it. It's usually used for us too. The two people in the ambulance, we had two of them. But anyway, SLUDGEM is what you need to remember out of this, and then the antidote is a duodope kit and or a Mark I kit. Both antidotes have the same thing in it, atropine or paroxamine. Okay, moving on. Vesicants, example of this is going to be mustard gas. This is aerosolized. It's used to cause burn injuries to skin. So it's kind of absorbed through the skin and it causes blisterings and burns. That's kind of the main purpose through it. And as far as treatment for it, you're going to try to wash those chemicals off of the people. Cyanide, you need to be familiar with this one too. Your telltale kind of test answer for cyanide poison is going to be an almond smell. I've never spoken to anybody in my life that has smelled almond smell from cyanide, but it is a textbook answer. So an almond smell associated with cyanide. What cyanide does is it actually inhibits part of your Krebs cycle. So as your Krebs cycle produces ATP, it uses oxygen to be efficient at producing ATP. Well, cyanide will bind to part of that Krebs cycle and it'll stop the production of ATP, causing the destruction of your cells eventually. So if someone's exposed to cyanide, there is an antidote for it. It's very expensive and we don't carry it on ambulances. It's called a cyano kit. It's also an injection that you can give yourself. Moving on down your book, pulmonary agents, your book talks about, seems like a pretty big catch-all type box called choking agents. So essentially anything pulmonary agents is going to affect the alveoli, it's going to affect the bronchioles, and you're going to treat these patients like you would any other kind of like respiratory patient. So, you know, if they got fluid in their alveoli, crackles, let's maybe think about some CPAP, think about some oxygen, positive pressure ventilation, some TEEP, something like that. Essentially, we're just trying to keep them oxygenated, keep their lungs moving. Okay, riot control agents. I really didn't know what they were talking about when I saw this, but they're talking about like some type of gas that people use to kind of control crowds, which is like, you know, people protesting nowadays is pretty, like we hear about this all the time, right? What most of the riot control agents come from nowadays are capsaicin coming from peppers, so concentrated capsaicin. I don't know if y'all like, I'm a big fan of hot sauce, I love hot sauce, but yeah, capsaicin kind of concentrates that chemical in the pepper and makes it much more strong, so that's what they're using here. For these patients, we oftentimes just need to hose them down, rinse them off with water, their eyes or respiratory system, whenever it's exposed. Sometimes this here, your signs and symptoms from like the gas used from capsaicin can look like a nerve agent also at the time. So like it's kind of hard to decipher whether it's a nerve agent or it's a coming from capsaicin initially. But anyway, this person will degrade pretty quickly. This person's not going to degrade that quickly unless they have an anaphylactic reaction. Over here, your book throws in this toxic industrial chemicals. I'm just going to stop right there. There's over 1,000 of them. There's probably thousands of them. They're probably all a lot different. So we're just going to leave it here. I don't know why the book throws this in here. Talking about biological agents. When you think about biological agents, I don't know if y'all were around whenever we had the anthrax scare, whenever somebody mailed envelopes of supposedly anthrax to different places. Biological agents is trying to have a spread of disease against the population. One of the things that comes to mind for me where we were very successful in this kind of weapons of mass destruction was us Americans. We caused a lot of harm with this. What do? We gave the Native Americans blankets infected with yellow fever. We brought mumps and measles and rubella into their population because we knew they didn't have an immune system or way to deal with it. We killed a lot of Native Americans this way. This is biological warfare. That's what we did to Native Americans. We don't see this, right? I'm trying to think of like where this has been used in modern day, and I really can't think of one. But we all know how COVID just spread just recently in the few years. Ebola is always one that causes like a scare for people. There's actually several different types of Ebola. Ebola Zaire is what people think of as so like lethal and deadly. There is a type of Ebola. Doesn't present any signs or symptoms. So, but yeah, using some kind of biological agent to infect a population and cause harm. Coming on over here, we have nuclear and radiation weapons. We talked about this a little bit in another chapter. This one talks about the different types of rays that you can get from being exposed to radiation. So gamma rays, neutron rays, beta rays, alpha rays. Gamma rays travel long ways. That's usually what we talk about whenever we're thinking of someone been exposed to some type of radiation is through gamma rays. Neutron rays, these are very small, they move very fast, they'll fly right through the human body. They do cause a significant amount of damage. Having said that, you're not going to see neutron rays unless you're somewhere right around a nuclear reactor. So we're probably not going to see this unless it's like Chernobyl incident or something maybe. Beta and alpha rays, they're much larger, they're smaller, they don't move near as far, they're easily stopped by air and or clothing. If we have contamination from alpha or beta rays, it's usually from ingestion of some form or fashion. Alright, we don't need to talk about decontamination for this because we talked about it in the hazardous material chapter, so if you need to reference that, go back and take a look at it. This book also talks about active shooter. Active shooter drills, we run all the time. We're getting very familiar with this. I think we average over one active shooter incident in America per day now. From EMS standpoint, I have trained with a SWAT team here in Steamboat a fair amount with active shooter drills, and we try to do about one a year with the SWAT team here. For EMS, our role is, we have in Routt County, we have a few paramedics that are part of the SWAT team as EMS personnel, and for the most part they stay outside and treat people that the SWAT team brings out to them. That's kind of our role. We usually don't go in the hot zone. If we do end up going in the hot zone, the EMS personnel is encapsulated within the SWAT team. We go in to grab someone and drag someone out essentially. The only thing that we're gonna do maybe in a hot zone is throw on a tourniquet or throw on a chest seal, and that's about it. That's all we do in hot zones. It's mainly about getting the people out. So that's kind of EMS's role in the active shooter drills. And I think that is about it for this chapter, you all. So your key takeaways for this that you might see on National Registry type stuff is gonna be your blast injuries, your 4 different types of blast injuries. You're probably gonna see that again. Coming over here to your nerve agents, you should be familiar with your nerve agents, and then your cures for that, or your treatment for that, I should say, is your do-it-o kit, your Mark 1 kit. Sludge 'em, you should remember from here. As far as vesicants, I don't know if you're gonna see this again, you should just be familiar with what it is. It causes skin burns, blistering skin burns. Cyanide, your takeaways are almond smell, right? Okay, and there is a antidote for it called the Cyano kit. Okay, I don't know that you're gonna see much over pulmonary agents or rock control agents, and surely not this. Biological agents, I don't know that you're gonna see much about it on any kind of test. Coming over, you should be a little bit familiar with gamma rays, neutron rays, beta rays, alpha rays. And I think that's a sum up for chapter 44.